Hello BookTube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books. I have something fun for you today. At least I hope it's going to be fun. It's a tag and it's related to the World Cup of Football. Because as you probably know, the World Cup of Football is starting today, November 20. It's today as of posting the video. As of filming, it's tomorrow, and as of you watching, I have no idea. So the first game opposes Qatar and Ecuador. It is at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that's the east coast of North America. In your time zone, I don't know when it is. And of course, the fact that it's hosted by Qatar has brought a bit of a cloud over the entire event because it's an environmental disaster, it's a human rights disaster, and it appears to be some sort of good governance disaster because Qatar promised things to FIFA and sponsors, and at the last minute is just going around, is just going back on its word. So anyway, there's a bit of a cloud hovering over the event. But if you care about it, I suppose you probably did not click on this video. And I think it's possible to enjoy the World Cup and ignore it because at this point, I don't know how much can be done. I wonder what can be done. But anyway, if you've clicked on this video, I suppose you don't care that much about it. And to be honest, I don't care that much. The fact that funny things are going on in the Middle East. Are we really surprised? Anyway, I said this would be a fun video. Yay! Fun video. Back to fun. Okay, but the controversy put aside, fun here. Okay, so I thought it would be fun to create a tag related to the World Cup of Football. The problem is I know strictly nothing about football. My first idea was to take every position on the football pitch, so 11 positions, and create a bookish question, a bookish prompt related to it. And I quickly realized that I couldn't because I really know nothing about football, and that would be just a pathetic tag. However, I remembered reading something years ago and I found the article. It was published in The Guardian in 2014, so 2 World Cups ago. And The Guardian did not invent the thing either. They took it from Penguin, I think the publishing house Penguin, and now I'm taking it. So this is an original tag where I'm creating absolutely nothing. So the idea is simply to create a team of authors representing literature from your country. So you choose 11 authors because there are 11 players on a football pitch. So you choose 11 authors to represent your country. And that's as simple as that. So if you want to do the tag, your tag, of course, I'm going to do the tagging at the end. But just to begin with, if you want to do it, you're tagged. And your country, you can define it the way you want. It could be a country where you live, the country where you were born, the country your parents were born. In my case, it's all the same thing. It could be the country you're supporting. So for example, you could be born and growing and living in Canada and not really care about Canadian literature. And perhaps you were more interested about Japanese literature or Italian literature. So feel free to create the team for the country that inspires you the most, I guess. And I'm going to add a caveat, is that for an author to be on your team, you have to have read at least one of their books. Because I guess if we just relied on textbooks and reputations to create the best teams representing a country, the best authors representing a country, we would end up everyone with the same teams, and I guess it would be boring. So I'm going to add that little rule that you have to have read at least one book by the authors on your team. So the idea also is to associate the authors with the position on the pitch. So in theory, you would have to explain why you chose this author as a striker and this author as a winger and this one as a fullback and this one as a goaltender or whatever. But as I said, I know nothing about football, and I would be in a very awkward position to try to pretend that this author would be a very good fullback because blah, blah, blah. I have no idea what a fullback does, even though I did a bit of research yesterday. That's how I came up with the words. To yesterday, I didn't know what these words were. So what I suggest you can do if you know nothing about football like me, you choose 11 authors, you put one in goals, so that's your goaltender. And then you choose 3 or 4 to be in a defensive position, 3 or 4 to be in an attacking position, and whatever's left is in the middle. And I don't know what they do. So for me personally, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my hockey knowledge and somewhat translate it to football, just hoping that what is required of an attacker in hockey is the same thing that is required of an attacker in football. And same thing of a defenseman. Well, in hockey, they're defensemen. But somebody in a defensive position in hockey, I'm just going to assume that similar qualities are required of a a player in a defensive position in football. So that's just what I'm going to do. Or you don't even have to associate it with players. You can just name 11 authors representing the literature from your country, and that's that. So just do the tag the way that it suits you. And if you want to add other rules, like if you want your team to just represent mysteries or to just represent nonfiction, because we are in Nonfiction November, or you can do whatever you want. Just that's the idea. You create a team of 11 players, authors, representing literature from your country, and that will be your team. And nobody wins and nobody loses, because books are more fun than sports. Nobody loses. Yeah, that's an advantage of books. Without further ado, the way I decided to divide my team, I decided to use 4 players, authors, in a defensive position, 4 in an attacking position, and 2 in the middle. And the worst is that according to my research yesterday, I believe this is a credible tactic, 4-2-4. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if it's good for Canada or not, but whatever. That's going to be my literary team. So what do I expect from a defensive player in hockey, and assuming in football too? I'm expecting something reliable, because the defense is really at the basis of your team. If you have bad defense, you have no chances of, you really have no hope of winning, because if you have, if your defense is a Swiss cheese and full of holes, it's not going to go well. So what I'm expecting of defense players is something solid. So it's foundational to your team. Defense is foundational. So I'm going to put in defense authors of foundational aspects of Canadian literature. So first, what is more foundational? The most foundational of all foundational books of Canadian literature, Anne of Green Gables. So my first player is Lucy Maud Montgomery, and I would put her in defense, as I said, because her books are probably the first books of literature that we read. She is the most read author, Canadian author of the world. I'm pretty sure more than anyone else. I'm sure she is the Anne of Green Gables is probably the most read Canadian book ever. So I think that Lucy Maud Montgomery would do well on defense, on a literary team. Another aspect of that is foundational, I believe, to Canadian literature is literature that is set in small town, because I think, at least in Canada, the true character, the true nature of Canadians is found in the people living in small town. And one of the best writers of small towns in Canada, I believe, is Margaret Laurence. Margaret Laurence is very often overshadowed by the other Margaret, or by Alice Munro, who also writes about small towns. I think she's an underrated Canadian writer. I really like her books. This is the Stone Angel. This is the first of a cycle of 5 books, if I remember correctly, the Manakawa cycle. And I'm not sure I said that correctly. I don't know in the order. I think that's what it is. I should have checked. Anyway, it's the first book of a cycle of novels set in small towns. It's really good. So Margaret Laurence, if you've never tried her, go ahead. My next author is also, it sort of groups the qualities of the 2 that I mentioned. She wrote a classic, and she also writes about small towns, but she also writes about big towns, and that is Gabrielle Leroy. I believe she's one of the foundational writers of French-Canadian literature. This is The Tin Flute. It is set in Montreal, and that was the first French-Canadian book set truly in a city, because previously, before that, most French-Canadian novels were set in villages, and it was about the life of peasants, of people living off the land. And this was the first one, first novel about workers living in cities, the precarity of renting, trying to live 12 people in a small 2-bedroom apartment, and things like that. So Gabrielle Leroy, I believe. She's also something that's good for defense, I guess, is people who can travel, who can be at more than one place on the pitch, not quite at the same time, but quite quickly. And Gabrielle Leroy, she lived in Manitoba, and she lived in Quebec, and she also lived in France. And anyway, so I think she would be a good representative of Canadian literature to put somewhere in a defensive position. And finally, my last defensive player would be Louise Penny. Now, of course, so far she's the first living author that I put on my list, and the reason that I think Louise Penny would be good in defense is that she is very solid, she's very reliable. We know what we're going to get. So this is the first of the Armand Gamache series, which is a series of mysteries. That's another thing I should have said. Louise Penny won several awards of mystery writing, the Agatha Christie Award, more than once. And she writes about small towns. Most of the novels are set in Three Pines, which is a little village in the Eastern Townships. So she writes about little places and, well, not ordinary people, because all the characters in there, they're half crazy, but anyway. So when we buy a Louise Penny, we know what we're going to get. So very reliable, and she produces every year a book comes out, at least one, sometimes it's two. So she's very reliable, and yeah, reliability is a good quality in defense. Now I am moving forward in the pitch, and we come to the position that I don't know anything about, because there's no such thing as a middle position midfielder in hockey, so I really don't know what these people do. But I assume, since they are somewhere between defense and offense, that they serve some sort of transitional purpose, that they are some sort of a pivotal role. They probably have something to do with strategy, and they probably need to be analytical, because I suppose that they have to know when they have to be in defensive mode and attacking mode, though obviously it depends on which team has the ball. But anyway, I suppose that people playing in the middle of the field must have a certain amount of analytical mind, and I guess a certain amount of versatility too. So for the analytical part, I thought that I would put Margaret Macmillan, a writer of nonfiction, because I like nonfiction and this is my team, so I wanted at least a writer of nonfiction. And if I had not added the rule of you have to have read at least one of their books, I suppose the natural answer for Canadian nonfiction writer would have been Pierre Berton. But I've never read any book by Pierre Berton, so that's why I decided to put Margaret Macmillan. She also has written, so this is a general book about war in general, about how it affects people and how war has shaped history, I guess, in society. But she has written specifically about World War I, the war that ended peace, Paris 1919, and her books are very interesting and I recommend it. So that's why I decided to put Margaret Macmillan on my team. And the most versatile author that I know, at least that I know and that I love, is Thomas King. So this is a novel, Green Grass Running Water. He won the Governor General Award with that book, but he also wrote poetry, nonfiction, short stories, mysteries. The man can write everything, and everything that I've read by him is good. I like it. So I think Thomas King would be excellent as a midfielder. Yeah, I think that's the name of the position of the people in the middle. I have no idea. So if I say something stupid about football, please don't hold it against me. I've said it. I know nothing about football. Now we are moving with the attacking positions, because once again, I don't know what they are. I know there's somebody called a striker and somebody called a winger, and what they do, I don't know. So what do I expect from attackers, at least in hockey? I assume that they are the ones who have the most intricate abilities. So in terms of authors, I think these would be the ones for whom language is very important. I would also expect wit, like creativity. So perhaps a bit of experimental writing in there and a bit of humor. And so I'm going to start. My first attacker would be Stephen Leacock. So this is Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town. Of a little town. And Stephen Leacock is so funny, brilliant, witty that a literary prize has been named for him. There's a Stephen Leacock Award. It's for humorous writing. And if you're interested, I believe all of his books are on Project Gutenberg. He's all in the public domain now. As I said, he writes about small towns, he writes about ordinary people, but he finds the funny situation in life, and he finds the funny aspect of it, and very brilliant, very witty. So I think he would make a good attacker of some sort. I keep using these words of hockey, but anyway, you understand. Moving on to writers for whom language is very important. And in fact, it's right, the next couple of writers almost created their own language. So the first one is Michel Tremblay. So Michel Tremblay is the superstar of French-Canadian writers. I have to be honest with you, whenever they talk about Nobel Prize of Literature, somewhere in there, I hope that Michel Tremblay is a contender. I don't know why outside of Quebec or outside of Canada, he's not very well known. I think in France, he's relatively known, but beyond that, beyond the French-speaking world, he's not very much known. And the reason may be that his writing is not easy to translate. He was one of the first one to write French-Canadian language as it is pronounced, not in the narrative, but in the dialogues. He started as a playwright. So as a playwright, it's much easier to write spoken words, I guess. But at the time when he started in the 1960s, spoken words in theater were upper class French words. They were the words of Molière. And Michel Tremblay decided to use ordinary words, ordinary characters, poor people, just the ordinary language, and that became his trademark. And just a few days ago, I went to see a new play that he had written, and it was about Chekhov as his inspiration. It was just brilliant. I just loved the play. So Michel Tremblay as our superstar, and I believe that most often the superstars in soccer tend to be on the attacking line. They are not. I don't think they're midfielders for some reason. Anyway, so my superstar, that's Michel Tremblay. Another one who almost created her own language is Antonine Maillet. She is, I don't know if she's younger, but I think her works arrived a bit after those of Michel Tremblay. And in her case, she wrote the language of Eastern Canada, of Acadie, so of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, so the French spoken there. And also she's a superstar. She's the only Canadian author to have won the Goncourt Prize, which is the highest prize in French literature. So she's the only one to have won it. She's a very dark horse for the Nobel. I don't think she could ever win it, but I think, as I said, she's another superstar. She has a lot of writing abilities. Her writing is awesome, and yeah, she deserves to be on our team. And the last one, another French-Canadian author, Anne Hébert. She's another one who is very good with language. She's also a poet, so she doesn't write just novels, she's also a poet. There is an Anne Hébert that I believe would make her a very good attacker, is that there's a dark streak in what she writes. There's always some sort of undercurrent of something very, very dark in her books. This one is the Children of the Sabbath, so it's about sorcery and things like that. Her novel Kamouraska is about a murder. Another one of her books is about incest. So there's always something a bit dark, a bit devilish in her books. And I think it's not bad to have a bit of a devilish attitude in attacking in football, right? Right. Yeah, I know my football. I know very well. And finally, the last player on my team will be, of course, the goalkeeper. I kept the goalkeeper for last. And what do we need in a goalkeeper? We need somebody who is everywhere. The goalkeeper is allowed to do things other players are not allowed to do. So the main example is to take the ball with his hands. The goalkeeper is allowed to do that. So an author who can do things that other authors don't do, who is everywhere, who is bigger than life and very intimidating, Margaret Atwood. Yes, of course. I could not make a team without including Margaret Atwood. This is The Handmaid's Tale, a book that now is bigger than life, perhaps more impressive than it really is, that looks bigger than it is in reality. I think Margaret Atwood makes the best goalkeeper, I think. So that's my team of representative of Canadian literature, my 11 authors who should play for Canada, I believe. So now what I have to do is to tag some people. As I said at the beginning, if you want to do the tag, you are tagged, and adapt it the way you want. Just make it fun. But I'm also going to tag more precisely my fellow participants in the, I don't know what it's called, Readathon challenge created by Mark from Book Time with Elvis. If you don't know what it is, I'm going to leave a link to the announcement in the description box below. It's mainly that the participants are associated with one of the team playing in the Football Cup. We read a book by an author from that place or set in that place or about that place. And if the team loses, we have to read a book or an article, a short story. We have to read something by related to the country that beat our team. And all the way like that until the end, until for the final match, half the people are reading for one team and half the people are reading for the other team. So I'm going to tag the booktubers who are participating in this. I don't have an official list of participants, so I just took the names from the comments under the video, under Mark's video, and the participants in our Voxer chat, which is a whole lot of fun. And if I forget you, I'm sorry. Just leave me a comment. I'm going to tag you. Anyway, you're tagged. You're all tagged. I am tagging Mark, of course, from Book Time with Elvis, Barter Hordes, Bookish, Alice in the Giant Bookshelf, Scally Dandling About the Books, Gem of Books, Angie's Book Chatter, Sean D. Standfast, knitting, books, etc., misreads a lot, remembered reads, rambling reviewer, rambling raconteur, books, songs, and other magic, another bibliophile reads, revenant reads, sterling reads, and freshly read books. That's it. That's my tag, my original tag where I did not invent anything, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're doing the tag, let me know. I'm just going to go and watch it and see all the literary teams fighting with one another in this World Cup. That can be fun. So enjoy your reading, enjoy your World Cup, and I'll see you in the next video. À la prochaine!